has been grateful, and so for that reason, we are great to have this, beautiful day and see what it has in store. Professor Gitile Naituli, governance expert, is here with us this morning for the very first time. Yes. Professor, it's a pleasure to have you.
It's wonderful to be here.
Yes, and of course, well endowed with so much, in terms of understanding the politics of the day. I think it's only fair that we also get to engage this gentleman. And on those bases, we ask you again to be part and parcel of the conversation. Ask the questions that you'd want to ask. This as we decipher and ponder on the political events in the country and across board. Speaking of across board, we do not come out of this place without speaking of what is happening in Sudan. And, we keep saying that we're not immune, Professor, because these small things will then culminate to bigger stuff. Sudan is in a span of 5 years, so much has happened in Sudan, and it's still not clear as to what really the nation is going to do or where they are headed. The people are still languishing in poverty. Times continue to be tough, and here we are. We're talking of a coup. Not even 2 years after. I mean, the dramas of Omar al-Bashir, it's still not clear as to his fate and all that.
Actually, it's very easy to assume that we are immune.
Yes.
As Kenyans, for people to do what the Sudanese are doing, mount those coups and so on, you need to have a streak of nationalism sometimes.
Yeah.
Because what moves you to take that kind of risk is because you think you can correct some mistakes. For the greater good. Yeah. We are extremely selfish people ourselves. We look at what is personally beneficial to us. That is our culture. Now, because of that culture, I think we are fairly safe. I think we can take a lot of suffering without reacting. Right. What have you seen, Hanoi Kenyans? The other day there was Pandora's Papers.
Yes.
We understand that as a country, really, the nationalist number one is the president of the republic.
Yeah.
But we are told he has some money offshore.
Yes.
So that puts question. But did you see any Kenyans question it?
No. Well, at least we questioned, but we still are waiting for answers, so to speak.
But
I don't know to what level.
Questioning, you ask what actually can make Kenyans painful enough to move to the street and say, no, this is wrong. Nearly nothing. Why? Because we are too selfish. We just love ourselves.
If things are going well for me, then I don't care about what is happening.
I don't care what's happening with anyone else.
Yes.
That is different between us and all the other countries which you see they have engineered change, like Tunisia.
Yes.
Sudan, of course, I don't know whether it's changing the engineering or resisting change, because what is happening there may be totally different. They could be resisting change.
That's why they say they want the civil government back.
Because the military could be resisting change. They've been in power for over 30 years, and Bashir. So those people could be resisting change. They may not be doing it for Sudan.
Yes.
They may actually doing it for very selfish
gains.
But I think to an extent we are also lacking, because sometimes that is usually not the best route.
That's true.
It's better sometimes to persevere and have change in small doses, so that is peaceful change. Sometimes shaking in the country like that may not be the best route. It is not always the best, even though of course we saw the progress is always made when there is drastic change. Then the progress comes also in that way. If you look at the US, after the Civil War, the Americans took off, basically, literally took off, when they united the country under Abraham Lincoln. Chic sometimes is not a bad thing. It opens the space for new leaders to emerge.
And true to it, revolution is what got Sudan to where it is that they are today. We were talking about Sudan, and for a moment there was that feeling that South Sudan is in the worst of states. And we always kept saying that, the world's youngest nation is nowhere near getting stability. And up until date, South Sudan is not in the best of shape. But look at Sudan right now. And look at the dangers that this then poses, because these are neighbors that are having their countries in turmoil. And, the East African countries, again, are not in the best of shape in terms of, stability and all that. It's like a time bomb.
Yeah, indeed it is. Well, because one thing, Kenya is very close to Southern Sudan. Of course, South Sudan is now next to Northern Sudan. And of course, the trouble that happens in Northern Sudan has a lot in terms of connection with the Southern Sudan. So there'll be a spillover of maybe even refugees coming down to all the way probably to Kenya and that kind of a thing. But I sympathize with Sudan and I would take a different route from what Professor is saying. I'm a believer of peace, and people who've been, if you look at what is happening in Rwanda today, and of course in Kenya, people appreciate peace by virtue of having been in some turmoil of some sort and seeing how destabilized the people can be and how devastating can be. If you ask the Rwandese and the Kenyans in, the just skirmishes that we had in the other election, that is how people appreciate peace. I want to believe the reason why the people of Sudan and in the streets today are asking for their civilian government, irrespective of how oppressive it was, they had started realizing some sort of peace, some sort of independence. And a democratic space was opened up where people can now make decisions based on what they want. I think that is what they're yearning for, because if you look at, again, we have had situations in countries where the military steps in and does a coup, but then it does better than the government, they're sort of delivering people from an oppressive government. But in South Sudan, it has been different. The civilian government was, to a big extent, trying to go the people's way. But you see now when the military comes, like what I saw yesterday, the military was in the street shooting residents, who are yearning for civilian government. So the dynamics that happen within, coups and what have you. Kenyans, as Prof here says, we stage our coups on social media and it ends there. So once we do coups on Twitter and Facebook and all those things, but it's for the love of peace. And as he says, that Kenyans are self-centered, as opposed to, we do not have that nationalism, glued together as nationalists, because that is what causes revolutions. When things happen and you push things as a country or as a society, that is what causes coups. But in Kenya, people who like, I am after my own business, that is why even in this political arrangement I've been telling you, some of the meetings you're seeing in hotels, those are people who are not after their communities, they're after their businesses. They're thinking, now if anything goes bad, I've viewed this empire for quite a long time, that is going to crumble down. So Kenyans are individualistic people, which I think to a certain extent it is a good thing. We think about ourselves, and as you think about yourself and I think about myself,
it starts from that.
Then it starts from that.
All right, well, we are keenly watching what is happening in Sudan, and we'll be here to keep us up to tabs.
I just want to add a small thing, but I will try to use the language which is good. Now, there appears to me that there's some of us, not necessarily, within Africa, when you look at it, who are simply predisposed to answer activity, extreme activity. So you look at Nigeria, the people bring issues, is Hausa land. You look at Somalia, these Nilo Hamites. Nilo Hamites and the Hamites. These people are fairly very active. Now when you come to Uganda, you can see the same activity with the same kind of people. Now when you come to Kenya and Tanzania, because of the preponderance, I think 3/4 of people here are Bantus. The Bantus like running away from any conflict.
From
In fact, they can't fight anything. So because they like running away from conflict, it's very hard to force these fellows to take actions like you see in those countries.
You mentioned Nigeria, and Nigeria. Well, aside from the Fulani and the Hausas, there is this group that is now fighting for this, the Igbos, which are largely Bantus at one to assume.
They even wanted to secede at one time.
They still do up until date. Yes, the Biafrans.
But you see why they want to do that? Because they are surrounded by those Hausa Fulani fellows.
Those that are,
and the Yorubas are like the neutral fellows. So in Kenya, you can take the Kambas and the Luyas are the peacemakers, the neutral Kenyans who kind of maintain, because even when you look at the leadership right now contest in this country, given the Luyas numbers, why is the Ruto Kalenjin important? Given those guys the numbers. So because these fellows are calm, they seek nothing. Both of them, they are maintained peace in Kenya, basically. Because they are not in the competition. It's not fierce. Competition is not fierce in this country. So that is the difference, and I think we are lucky as a country to that extent, because also our leaders are not being kind to us. They have been very exploitative. This is the only, it's not the only country, but when you look at the way, our leadership is parasitic. It feeds on us. You know, you look at the American president, he pays rent for the White House. He also pays for his food. Yeah. Okay, so ours, we give them salary. We have a contract of that 1% which they take after the end of their term, but we still don't give them a lifetime pension. There is no basis on how we support our leaders. You understand?
Right.
But the Kenyans, as long as I guess they can eat and sleep, they don't dig into those details.
But Prof, you know, you raise this pertinent issue, and Professor says, Hesh, that true to it, Kenyans really do not always want to trigger for as long as you're okay. Yeah. You do not want to be the person to push for this. But he equally acknowledges that sometimes a revolution is necessary. Sometimes, you know, going it the hard way, as the Sudanese would do, is necessary. And maybe this could appear as though is a bad thing happening in Sudan right now, but could be the step towards the right direction in terms of, you know, emancipation, in terms of making sure that they have a nation well protected. And I mean, we saw that even with our forefathers as they fought the colonialists. Does it mean then that as the situation is taking us, because the situation is dire, the times are tough, does it then call for a conversation on a revolution? I mean, we've had that. Remember at that time when it was happening in Sudan, when al-Bashir was, you know, being ousted, I mean, the conversation was probably should come back to Kenya. It all started with bread down there. And do you suppose as the people of Kenya, we really can get to that level where we think it's even food that can trigger a revolution?
No, I think the revolution at times is very necessary, you know, and especially as the Prof here says, we have a parasitic government, you know, where leaders eat into their people as opposed to the other way around. So I think it is a question of leadership, because I have seen close to revolutions in this country, you know, and it all begins with leadership. We have people who are now dining with the government, while we would have seen those people, you know, and like, for example, let me tell you something. If Raila was not in government today, then the kind of revolutions we'll be seeing here are around the issues of fuel, around the issues of taxes, around the issues of those things that are ravaging Kenyans. But so it's purely a question of leadership. I remember during the Kibaki time, and I've always mentioned this to you, it depends with the kind of leader that you have. Yeah. Kibaki had inspired people to the extent they had started taking things in their own hands. It is during the Kibaki time where you would ride in a matatu, a police officer stops you, takes a bribe, and everyone says, no, this is not going to happen. Right. You know, people had started taking things in their own hands, you know, and saying, this country is ours, and had given an approach, people's approach, devoid of tribes, devoid of everything. I remember there was time that there was a matatu people stage a protest. Remember when they withdrew their vehicles and Kenyans decided, let's walk, you know, devoid of their tribes and what have you. People believed in the thing together. It was out of leadership, you know, because Kibaki inspired in terms of this is the way a country should be run. This is how you need to take things in your own. So I think revolutions in small bits, to me, would work for this country. And most where Kenyans would come out and say, this is not good, you know, and we cannot handle this and we're not going to take this. What we will turn away from is violence, and the violence that comes with those revolutions. I think that is what most Kenyans fear. But it gets to a point where things are so bad to the extent that you cannot handle it anymore. You know? For example, I'll tell you, if the government today decides to add some 20 more shillings on fuel, I am telling you, it will not be business as usual. You know, I can see a situations where I cannot, you know, because it's a cross-cutting problem. And mostly people do revolutions based on cross-cutting problems. But we have ways of, you know, customizing problems in this country, where a certain bit of people, you know, it's called a divide and rule thing. So in a divide and rule thing, you hardly get people who are, you know, at one point feeling the same and are ready for a revolution. But we are getting there.
Well, I don't know if we are, Professor, because let's just, for instance, take an example of the Jubilee government. He's given an example of the Kibaki's government. It's now the Jubilee's government turn. And I mean, it's not just on fuel, but on a couple of other commodities. Prices have been shooting up by the day. And so to be honest, I mean, just the other day, we had the conversation on prices shooting up on fuel. So I don't think, I agree with you somehow, that Kenyans have really not gotten to that point where there is that dire need for the same. But speaking of which, then came in the handshake that has hugely been castigated by many. And I mean, that is also a story that has been captured in one of the papers as to the Standard newspaper, as the handshake and whether it was an undoing to the political lifeline of Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and whether it was the best thing that ever happened to the people of Kenya. If it was as best or as good, why then are there some people who are castigating the same?
Mheshimiwa is right on one thing here. We may be moving actually towards the revolution, because revolution comes when there is extreme unfairness. So now we're in positions where government, for example, would advertise positions when they have already selected people. So they make you go through applications and all that. In the end, they just take the ones they are pre-selected before you even put yours. So when you have now the children watching that, our children in schools, like the other, yesterday actually under class for the years, talking to them, telling them they didn't get a good grade. Then they asked me, Mwalimu, good grade isn't happy. Because there is no competition. When a job is advertised, there is no competition. Because we say competition is for the competent. You're asking us to be competent. But that won't matter. Because they already selected their relatives. This is how you create a revolution. When there is no faith in the system, and what Mheshimiwa said here, and restored that faith. So now when you look at the handshake, it was good in the sense that it calmed an adverse country. But that could have been done in a different way. It could have done by simply the leader of the opposition, Raila Odinga, accepting the reality of the situation, then quietly staying in the opposition. It doesn't have to organize the demonstrations and things like that. And that way now, these taxes which have come and they have been heavy on the people of Kenya. And let me also tell you this. These taxes have been very heavy on the economy. I don't understand the kind of economic advisors this government has, because there's nobody in his right mind put taxes on borrowed money. 20% on what they call bank transaction. You are preventing people from borrowing.
Which is not proper.
Which is not proper. So there's a lot of taxes which are not intended to promote the economy. Now these taxes have been able to go through because of the handshake. Without the handshake, a lot of taxes would never have gone through. The taxes on the fuel would never have gone through. I actually think that without that handshake, then you
would have been in a better position.
Then Jubilee government could easily have collapsed towards the end of 2018.
You think?
Yeah.
Collapse or done better?
Collapse.
No,
that wouldn't have been.
Then in this case, why is it?
We would have gone to the election. Actually, Raila accepted the Jubilee government by going into it, because at that time, the bankruptcy, I mean, you can see we're already bankrupt anyway. If you look at the amount of money we pay the debtors, at that time the economy was very hard. Remember the taxes which were put in immediately the handshake went through. Those taxes will never have gone through with the... Because I mean, at the level of parliament then, of course, the opposition was in favor of them. Yes, so the handshake has cost Raila, if you ask me, more than it has. It has been beneficial to Jubilee, but it's been very expensive to Raila. Hold it right there. Before we come to that political aspect of it and how it has cost who and has not cost who. Because the UDA argue that it is the handshake that has costed them and has costed the Jubilee government. Well, we wait and see. But true to it. Just a little bit, before we get to that, that's going to be a conversation in itself. Is big. Yes. But on the revolution bit, some of the signs of revolutions are noticed. But to tell you, look at the apathy that we have in terms of taking voter registration. Yes. I had the privilege of talking to some young people over the weekend, and I talked to so many of them. They don't give a damn about voting. They don't care. They don't think they don't care. Anything. They have absolute. I mean, they are properly convinced that it's not going to change anything. Their one vote is not going to change anything. But you who have, voted for the longest of time, do you suppose it can change anything? You sit them down, show them the benefits, and they tell you they will only elect a government to go and steal again. Yeah. That's what they believe in. Yes. So what happens? Those young people will regroup. And they will regroup and cause revolutions. These are people who believe we just vote you in to go and eat and steal from us. And that is why we are not voting. You may think that they do not have connections, but remember, this is a social media group that connects, from Kisumu to Homa Bay to any part of this country that will cause a revolution one day. So when you see this apathy, let the government not think that is something that is on the surface. They need to scratch harder. And delve into this thing and know this thing is going to cause this country problems. We are worried about those that are not going out there to register as voters. For a moment, we've forgotten that we should probably even be worried more of those ones that have voted before and have felt like their vote has not really counted. And in this case, then, they are thinking, should I even vote in the first place? And I'm telling you, the buying of votes
is ongoing right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I have seen, or at least I've heard, that there are people who are being ferried from one point to the other to go and sell their votes. I mean, this is happening, Professor.
Yeah, well, yeah, but Mheshimiwa, what he's saying is absolutely, I think I can see it coming, but I can tell you, it will take between 10 to 20 years.
For that revolution to happen.
Because the pain must be sufficient.
Okay.
The pain must be such that you prefer dying than living. We have not reached there.
Okay.
So we are still a little bit safe. But like you are saying, the political class, if he is not careful and continue promoting this sort of foolishness, because you see, he gave Kibaki as an example. Kibaki was very calm. He didn't talk a lot, but every project he did it for the people of Kenya.
Yeah.
The Jubilee projects, I can tell you, if you get a good in government, some of them you don't even have to pay. There's some of the loan, like that railway, you don't have to pay it. I mean, Njime told us that the cost, and Njime must be known because he is one of those deep state fellows.
Yes.
From Mombasa to Malaba was supposed to be 55 billion. It ended up being 390 billion to Nairobi alone. So most of that money went to people's pockets. Now in international law, there is what is called morality of debt, which you can use to avoid paying. And that if the debt benefits the borrower, I mean the lender, more than the borrower, is unconscionable, you can refuse to pay. So I think in the event we get a good government, you can approach the international court and ask for valuation of most of the Chinese projects because they are overvalued. Most of the money the Kenyan officials were paid in China. As you know, the Chinese, if they catch you in their country with bribe, they shoot you. But then they are bribing our officials so that they have abandoned us with the project which are worth nothing. You understand?
Yes.
So what if the leadership which comes after this election, it continues the Jubilee style? Because I think from independent, we are very unlucky. We only had one leader committed to Kenya, and that's Mwai Kibaki. We continue in Jubilee style, it will accelerate what the Mheshimiwa says. It will accelerate towards the revolution.
But true to it, before we come to Right Honorable Raila Odinga and why you think the handshake was a disadvantage for him, Mahesh, I ask this question again. Our worry is hugely, and this is on the voter preparedness, and we'll be looking at that even in depth as we continue. But the worry is on those that have not registered at all. How much more of those ones that registered, that went to vote, and were told that, you know what, Right Honorable Raila Odinga's vote was stolen. And therefore, to them, I voted for Right Honorable Raila Odinga, my vote was stolen. Even worse, he's decided to work with the people that stole, his vote or my vote. And so in this case, what is the essence of waking up very early in the morning, go queue and vote, if my vote will never count anyway?
Yeah, that is very true, Linda. And it's really unfortunate because if you look at, for example, a narrative that has been peddled by Atwori of the deep state and what have you, what is simply telling people that you need not to just go and vote. This thing is decided, and when it comes, it shall go the system deep state way. I think it's really, really unfortunate. I think we need to get a reassurance of our electoral systems and know that every vote counts. We need to get IBC, convince us and tell us there is no deep state thing here, there is nothing here, we are going to have a credible election. But you see now, it is the political class again that has to tell the people that your vote will matter. Because the idea, people will tell you, Omolo Odinga has won in this and that election, but was denied by the deep state review. So we need to get all that crap away and get a reassurance of our systems and know that your vote will count. Because
Mahesh, let me ask this, and I hate to bring this debate, but it has to be here all the same. That the deep state that you speak of, is in existence. The likes of, Kimemia, who have been here long enough, have confirmed and affirmed that yes, the deep state is in existence, and sometimes it will favor the ones that, they favor, well, automatically. Then one would want to ask, and this is what I have heard from Honorable Jeremiah Kioni at some point when we're having a conversation with him, saying, you know what, yes, it's true, they are in existence, but sometimes they help bring a sanity in the nation because they've been here long enough. In the sense that, you know what, you hear like what it is that Atwoli is asking. Who are you safe you know, in whose hands are you safe?
You know, safety.
These are the people they have worked together with, and so they know the extremes that these individuals can probably go.
Then that beats democracy. Why do you tell the people to go and vote? Then we need to change our systems of voting. Yes, okay. Because ideally, the reason why we have democracy is that we allow the people to vote. And you see, it's about the people. The trust is in the people. It is the people who decide which leader they want, based on probably the economic model they've come up with, based on their manifesto, based on what they want to do for any country. So it should be left to the people to decide. And
I know Prof wants to come in. Prof, yes. You probably understand the importance and the liberty that your children could be having. But there are instances as a father, you say no, because you have been here long enough, you probably have been through that stage, and you have known how the world works. And there are times you'll tell them no. They might not see the sense at that point, but later on.
First, let me explain this.
Yes.
We don't have deep state in Kenya.
Prof, you know the one who just said.
Yeah, well, I mentioned it.
Yes.
You know, deep state as used in the West, where the term originated.
Yes.
These are career civil servants who love their country so much. They are willing to suffer personal loss to protect the country. What we have here is actually criminals. And we are, you know, these are criminal entrepreneurs. If you analyze these fellows calling themselves deep state, since they are calling themselves, they are all people who have made money either by working in the government, meaning stealing from the government, or trading with the government, which is the same thing. Because you trained and get paid for services never delivered. Okay? So these are criminal entrepreneurs. And we are giving them a good name. One way of correcting Mweshimiwa is to withdraw that name from them, so that we withdraw the respect from these groups. Because you see, when you dignify evil, like we dignify stealing of public property by calling it corruption instead of calling it theft. Because theft is, we know, is bad.
It's outright theft.
Yes. So we baptize. Now we are baptizing another criminal enterprise, calling themselves in deep state. But these are not deep state. These are just criminal entrepreneurs who manipulate the election in order to create a friendly government so they can continue robbing you.
Yes.
They have stolen in the other government. They now create a new one to continue the theft. Gangsters. So we need to deny them that opportunity. And like you said, it's unfortunate when somebody can say that the people who matter, the one who count the vote, the deep state. And then these politicians, they were all quiet. Nobody confronted them. Nobody confronted them. What are you doing? Why are you telling our children doing that they don't have to register to vote? Because their vote will not matter. So what I'm saying, when we use the language, we need to use the language appropriately. We need not to dignify evil. Because when we call deep state, we are actually dignifying evil. Because the other people hear it, they think the deep state are people who love Kenya. These people don't love Kenya. They are responsible for your misery. They are Kemsa thieves. They are Afia House thieves. They are, Triton thieves. They are Goldenberg thieves. These are bad people. You know, this group, for example, the Mount Kenyan group, which was pretending is going to interview, I don't know, candidate for us.
You think they are pretending?
No, they are pretending because who are they to us? I mean, of course, they use the stolen money to fund and they make sure the wrong person actually wins the election. But how does that help the people of Kenya? In that group, you can say there are very few people who credibility is unquestionable, like Macharia.
Yes.
These are homegrown entrepreneurs, or even Munga, the equity fellows. Okay, so there may be some more still within that group who have made their way honestly. But most of the other fellows are just really thugs.
All right, well, that is, I don't know whether we put a disclaimer on that, but well, the reality is that it happens. And you know, it doesn't just happen in Kenya. That's the truth of the matter.
Well,
you go to,
in other countries, of course, there are business people who fund the politicians, but those people are actually honest business people.
All right.
They don't import transformers who should blow up.
Okay.
You understand? They don't make our own, which instead of putting making a proper road,
yes,
they make one which finishes in 3 years. Okay? And then they turn around and they tell you they are very nice people and therefore they would like to select the next government for you. Right. So we need as a people to reject that approach. And say that if you are a good fellow like Machari and they tell us follow this one, we actually may agree with you.
All right.
Okay? I think that is why, I mean, to weigh on what he's saying and probably validate what he's saying. That is why I think that is what gives the DP confidence. When he talks about the deep state and whatever, because he understands that he's been governed for some time. Yeah. So he knows, we look at the deep state as an animal that exists somewhere, that we will one day come and roll and all of us will get afraid and kneel and do all those things. But he understands. This is a set of, yes, he knows is a set of people who do 1, 2, 3, 4 things to manipulate the elections or whatever. So that is why nobody tells people, don't worry about the deep state. That one will handle. You come in and vote because the power of the people. Because I normally ask, why was the deep state in Juja? What was the deep state in Kiama, for example? Okay. What did they do? They don't. They did nothing. They tried to influence. They came out with their money, but the power of the people, was too much for them. So it is a set of people who've interests. As he says, that will transit from one government to the other government. Because one tender was halfway, so you don't want to a different government that is not favorable to you to come and question. Yes,
you're also seeking protection for the crimes you committed in the other government.
Yes. So basically, there is nothing, there is no animal called deep state. It's a set of people who wants to run government throughout, for their own interest or whatever view. So we should not be afraid of them. We should soldier on and tell Kenyans that we need to go out and register as voters. And those ones who been voting and have been told that your vote doesn't matter, your vote really matters. So it's a question of, and that is what causes revolutions. When people realize that we keep casting our votes and nothing, happens and it doesn't matter. That is what will cause revolution. So I would see, as he said, a revolution will be coming in 15, 20 or 30 years. I see it coming sooner if this is allowed to happen. And then we should, if we have a proper government that exists on the rule of law, we should not allow some of these utterances to come. Because when Atwoli tells people it doesn't matter, there's going to be deep state that is going to determine, then what are you telling people?
Just abolish the elections.
Yes. Yeah. So this is just, abolish the elections and allow these people to tell us who is going to be the next president. What that now puts doubt into is the credibility of that election, is what is set in law in terms of every 5 years there shall be an election where people will elect the next government. And there's a person here who come telling us that doesn't matter. Then that should be charged in the court of law.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And
because what they are telling us when the says that if the election is close, you will truth. What you're telling him is those who died in 2007, those people are responsible for those deaths. Those who died in 2017 demonstration, those people are responsible for those deaths. Because we want to believe and trust in our electoral system. So that when you win, you have the credibility, you have the legitimacy to govern us. Okay? But now, when somebody says like that, it casts doubt in everything you are doing, and that's why probably now you're experiencing all this apathy. Because you will probably get then in bigger apathy in eternal. When people become more hopeless, they now try to find other methods, which is what Mwashimiwa is saying, that you may bring this revolution closer. I think the political class needs to sober up and stick to the rule of law and realize that as a people, this periodic opportunity to elect good people every 5 years, please don't take that away from us.
Again, I repeat, it's not in Kenya alone, and you look across Africa. Most of the people will tell you they don't have the confidence in the electoral commission and the system itself. You, Professor, have a proper background on what plays out with the IEBC. And here we are, an independent body that is probably not as independent. And I mean, you look at the adjustments that are happening as early as now in terms of the people who are positioned to deal with that. And, in as much as there's that confidence that you're being given that, IEBC is going to guarantee you a free and fair process. They also put a disclaimer and say, but remember, we are underfunded. And therefore, if we're underfunded, the chances of us, messing you up are extremely high. And equally, you hear them join the CSS for Interior, join the justice system or the judiciary in confirming to Kenyans that they have set all the plans set. But again, they appear to be compromised, or it appears like there's a battle between, say, the executive and the IEBC, the executive and the judiciary. Just how possible is this for them to accord us a free and fair process?
First of all, there was an attempt, a genuine one, after the 2007 actually to create an independent body. But I think it appears that has flopped, because if you remember those interviews which were conducted, they were live. But eventually the people who emerged, they never distinguished themselves in any way. Nobody even remembers they were in there.
Yes.
So this is how we kill institutions. You get the weaker individuals you can direct. And that is the problem. Because you see, remember the Asani Commission and actually created a very high level degree of confidence in the electoral process. So this group is not even attempting that. Now, where does the high cost come from? Because the Kenyan election, it costs $37 to get a voter to the poll. Actually, $20 to register, and $37 to get you to go and vote. It's the highest, it's the most expensive democracy money can buy. Okay. In the world. Okay. The reason is just to defend the cartels. There is the cartels waiting to earn money, illegal money during the election. Have you ever asked yourself, what is the justification for printing a ballot abroad? We print money in Ruaraka. But when it comes to printing the ballot, we go to UK or to the Arab countries, because the cartels must make their money. This election can be as cheap as the Rwandese election or as Ugandan election. We know the solutions. We know that it's very easy to get a ballot printing committee from competing parties and they use the government printer to print this ballot. But we don't want to do that because the cartels must. So the country has been captured. Okay, and that is why maybe Mwajimua is really right. Because of state capture, it's just that we cannot breathe. Otherwise, this election should be costing us around 12 billion. Wow. Or what Raila said, he said 4 billion or something.
Yes, 4. He said 4.
He said 4 billion.
IBC was up.
But it's around that. In genuine terms, it's around that.
Okay.
Okay, it cannot go beyond. If it goes anyway, it's around 12. The rest of the money is to feed the corruption process. Yes. It has nothing to do with conducting the election. Okay. This is our weakness.
All right.
And the credibility of all of us. For example, look at, it depends, you look at IBC based on where you sit. The other day, the Raida function was telling us that we need to disband this thing and that Chebukati should go home. Now that in government, now Chebukati all of a sudden has become a saint and he's credible enough to conduct elections. You see, those disparities will make Kenyans ask themselves, you know, if one person is bad today and then they sanitize the following day based on your position in government, I mean, do we have credibility? If I move towards where you are, and if I get into your line of, you know, I can benefit from something, you know, I am telling you, if KEMSA today, if ODM and Raila were outside government, what happened in KEMSA today? If it could have been, that would have been the real revolution. They would have been on the street. Even today, probably today, this morning, they would have been at Uhuru Park. But since some of them mentioned are they in government and dining with government, so and we have a principle which, of course, is you know, that we all know that you don't need to. I mean, you don't talk when you have food on your, you know, that is good manners. Okay. You don't talk when you have food on your mouth. So they're not talking. So because
you hold it right there. We're coming to you, Professor, and you know this as we discuss what you mentioned, that the handshake could have costed Right Honorable Raila Odinga politically more than, you know, any other person. And Meshach Owino is watching. He asks, Linda, so in Kenya you can be a professor and vote Uhuru and Ruto, then proceed to blame Right Honorable Raila Odinga. He only forgets that before Raila Odinga had the handshake, there were things like security amendments bills which went through by force. Mheshimiwa Nai is living in his own world where no vote has been stolen and probably doesn't even know that the server wasn't opened till this morning.
Server has been opened this morning?
They've not been opened. The server has not been opened till this morning.
Well, I mean, I want to agree with the viewer that, you know, he said the professor can vote for Uhuru, which is correct. Yes. I actually campaigned very heavily for that ticket in 2013. 2013, seriously. Yes. But where the viewer is also not right to see that and Raila not actually joined Jubilee, because the truth is be told that Raila right now is a part and the parcel of Jubilee. This election has been a walkover for him. Okay. I think that was a strategic mistake because now we are attributing some of our suffering to him. And that will not be happening if he didn't go that in direction. All right. But then just Mheshimiwa, I want to say just something about our electoral process. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that you don't need a server in France when you are running an election in Kenya. You don't even need it in Nairobi. The law requires that we count and declare the vote at a polling station. So it's very easy to collate presidential vote at the county headquarters. So that what is transmitted in Nairobi in terms of presidential vote is 47 entries. 47 entries, you don't even need a server. You can handle them on your phone.
Okay.
But nobody want to do that because that brings transparency. Okay, that makes sure that it's impossible to manipulate. So you have over 40,000 polling stations transmitting results to Nairobi. Okay, without a central coordination in here there, because what it will mean if they were to do that is if there is any issue in any county, we just lock that county alone and recount, because you can't recount it for the whole country. So we know exactly what must be done, but we don't want to do it. We work like there's a small 1948 book called the roast pig syndrome. It's describing a village in China which didn't know how to cook meat, food, control fire.
Yeah.
So they were living with the animals in the house. So one day children played when the older people had gone to the farms. House caught fire. They walked out. The pigs were roasted. When they came back, they were Linda there. Others saying we throw them away. Say no, let's taste, see if they are bad. We throw away. So they taste. It was delicious. Okay. From that day, anytime they want to eat a roast pig, they put in the house and then they put the house on the fire. Okay, so we seem to work in just like that.
Okay.
We are not able to offer solution.
Gentlemen, allow us to take a short break from that analogy by Professor, and then we come back and look at, generally the preparedness of the election and the guarantee that is being given to us as pertaining to, the elections, how it will be conducted, free and fair. Allow us to take a quick break, and then we come back on that very note. And also Nairobi. We need to talk about Nairobi briefly.
Yes.
All right. So after this break.
Oh, hi guys. Sorry, you found me 5 minutes before I started recording, but anyway, so most of you have been asking me why I started Ladies CLC Nighting with Joy Rongo. I have also had my own share of pain. I know how it feels to want to give up. This is basically here to speak hope and inspire somebody who's going through a rough patch, to tell them that they can turn their pain into power. Our guests are normally here to share their experiences so that you can know somebody else did it, so you can also come out of it stronger and better. Let me go to my recording, and remember to always stay tuned every Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
Undertaking husband duties on a boyfriend tender.
Guys, with bromance, do you share your woman with the bro?
Have a sister, give me your sister. I show you how these things are done.
So you go release and be like,
Men supporting each other, not only financially, but also socially.
Don't mingle with women you can't deal with.
Is there really a formula for dating and marriage?
Some men are procreational, some men are recreational.
Every Wednesday on TV47, the Men's Conference brings you a cocktail of top-notch advice to breed alpha males for alpha females in the society.
Tunaweza tumeite nje tutesiwe do. Mimi naitwa Ben. Mimi ndo rafiki ya babako.
Tumeleta dozi zako, usimize mtoto.
And now we have to deal with a drug addict.
Yani uliwa mzai wako?
I had to.
Sema! Dozi zangu ziko wapi?
Ben!
Tuisheni Uganda.
The road to 2022 is becoming tougher and trickier with each passing day.
Na wawache kuja kutuletea makasiriko.
Political aspirants in a dilemma whether to change allegiance or not.
Nonetheless, you have justified your change of stance.
It's my bloody personal politics.
tell them this. They could have gone to do law so that they become judges. They do not have the capacity, training, or skill to interpret a court
He has
order.
spoken. We have seen the Interior CS, Matiang'i, speaking. We have as well seen the CJ herself speaking. And all this in regards to 2022 preparedness and according Kenyans, the guarantee that it will be a free and fair process and there will be security.
Yeah. So I just to get a little back and, on what Prof was saying, but before I even get there, I'm reminded that today is the President's birthday. So happy
it
birthday,
is October.
Mr. President.
Yes,
And we wish you long life. You know, it's good to wish someone well.
The 26th,
it's the President's birthday, so happy birthday to the President and we wish him well. So just to just weigh in on what Prof was saying, which I believe is very true. Today, Raila is in his own undoing. The reason why he has to go around this country and is going to really mess him up is because of what he did to himself. It is the worst mistake that he did to get into government and to dine with government. Because Raila would have been out there critiquing this government, and there's so many evils that have happened in this government, but he chose to get in government. So actually what he did is that he sanitized Ruto. And he's the one who gave Ruto the space that he has. The Ruto that is so big today is because Raila went to government. If Raila did not get in government, then Ruto would equally be being faulted together with this government. We'll be talking off because they would not have moved away from Big Four agenda. So probably we'll be faulting the Big Four agenda with Ruto being part of it. But because Raila chose to get in government, so he got that of government, and that is why now Ruto can sit outside the fence and say, it is you who came in. This mess, you'll have to carry it along with you.
Professor, really,
let me just
the electorate...
let me just finish, because Professor will tell you, we tend to concur with Professor on this, that today Raila would have been a front runner. Actually, he would have been the best bet for this presidency. But now, unfortunately, he's going to compete. He's going to get a run for his money. And most likely, the DP is going to take the day.
If we can blame Right Honorable Raila Odinga, don't you think on equal measures we will as well blame the DP, and therefore we'll say that the
based
two
on
of
the
them
role
do
that the
not
DP
stand a
plays in the
chance.
Constitution,
Yeah.
based on the role that the DP plays in the Constitution, and the Constitution is very clear that he's on delegated roles.
Right.
And since the President did not delegate roles to him, so he got time to do his own things and to campaign and to shift blame to Raila, who has become a darling of government, and delegation seem to have gone his way. So he'd command things in government. And that way, he sanitized Ruto. If Raila chose to stay outside and not necessarily fight government or even cause chaos in the street, but stay as a critic of government, when fuels issues would have come, he would have been in a better position to critique the government in terms of taxes, in terms of
You see, Right Honorable Raila Odinga is a seasoned politician.
And today, he would have been a front runner.
What makes you think he would have been a front runner? Maybe he would not have been part of the race, because remember, the bullet was the last one at that particular time. What makes you think that the conversation we're having
bullet
today,
is always the last?
You know what is happening right now is that I'm told inner circles of government or inner powerful people are trying to coerce Mudavadi to shelve his interest and support Right Honorable Raila Odinga and the other principles of One Kenya Alliance. To be honest, if we were to go the way it was back then, do you think Right Honorable Raila Odinga would have even
Let's see what the professor agrees with.
Yes.
Raila is in a class of his own in this country.
Yes.
Raila never needed anybody to push him. Raila has established his credibility as the guardian of people's, even moral compass for the country. Because you remember, Raila has never been mentioned in any of these corruption deals and so on. So he never needed that. What we are saying is, and there is not a blame, we are saying that Raila made a strategic mistake. You made a decision that was not useful to you.
Okay.
Because the decision of going into government, okay, he had given up then on being president.
How is it not useful to him, Professor, when you hear that, oh, you know, we painted this man as a bad person in the, you know, in the size of the mountain, but right now we're coming to tell you that those were lies, those were just politics, but here we are to tell you that he's actually not as bad as you think. How bad a decision was it for him when he now works with the president, who you can't deny the fact that has a say in the mountain's politics?
So if you lied to us before, what's the guarantee that you are not lying now?
No, that's the question. That's the biggest question. But you think the people of the mountain are going to ask that?
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
All right. Are
that's
you
the
asking?
Question is exactly what they are saying. They are saying the people have destroyed their economy. And they are saying these are the people now bringing us Raila. So Raila now carries the burden of these fellows who he should distance himself from.
Yeah.
They see that these people are seeking protection for the crimes they have committed, economic crimes, against the country. Now they are seeking it through Raila. You understand?
Right.
Ruto becomes the angel. He becomes because they are not seeking protection through Ruto now, through Raila. So this is a strategic mistake Raila made. Now you mentioned Mudavadi being persuaded. Even if Mudavadi is not persuaded, how much can he make? The other day he ran. He got 412,000. You understand? Yes. Raila is in a class of his own in this country. He is only the politician who basically towers above everybody. He is the magnet. Raila can sell himself without anyone else. In fact, the problem Raila right now is having in his centre is because he's being sold. It's because he's not now selling.
It would have been better for him to go and
tell all these people, all the misery you are going through.
It's because of your people.
It's because of these fellows.
Okay.
Because you see, there's one thing in the Uhuru government as in positive for the country. He has debunked the idea that you need somebody from your home to be president. Because now in Central we are more miserable than we were before he became president.
Okay.
So Raila would be capitalizing on that, saying you can go to your home, where are you now?
But just how genuine is that
can't.
statement? There's so much progress in terms of infrastructure and all that has been channeled towards the direction of the mountain.
Infrastructure has been extremely expensive. If you look for
expensive,
that,
but
if
in favor of the mountain.
Wow.
I'll probably hold brief for the mountain.
If you look at our now the debt burden now, okay. If you look at that burden, then you realize it's not useful because the infrastructure has been overpriced. Overpriced.
Okay.
So the people have unfairly used the country to enrich themselves. So there's a problem here. But the other thing I wanted to say, which you mentioned there, is the congregation of the Chief Justice and all that. It is only in this country where election becomes a huge security threat. Okay, when there's an election in Tanzania, we don't even know about it. In most countries, 60 years after independence, we should not be hyper because there is an election. It shouldn't be a peaceful thing. Okay, we should all be going to the election peacefully. There should be no rancor, and I can tell you this election will be very peaceful, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
This will be the most peaceful election because the citizens know that they were not robbed by the other fellows.
Okay.
So whatever you come and tell us, you can tell us, we are not going to be emotional about it. Unless they pay people physically to cause chaos, this will be the most peaceful election you have ever seen. Because
So
people are disappointed.
All right. Okay.
Two things, Linda. I want to brief for the mountain. And I must say this, that in terms of, if you look at the economic viability of what has transpired in the mountain, then from an economic point of view, where we sit in boardrooms and analyze, then we will see nothing much has happened.
Yeah.
But if you look at what has happened on the ground, I will be wrong if I come from the mountain to deny that we've not seen tremendous growth in terms of road networks, in terms of dam being put up and whatever you. We have seen tremendous growth with the Jubilee government in terms of infrastructure. That we must admit. Irrespective of what we fought them for, I am from the mountain, I'm from Kiambu, I traversed through the mountain, and there has been tremendous growth. Right now we have a road that is coming from Kenol all the way to Nanyuki. So there's quite a lot of road network that is happening. But be that as it may, we need to look at a couple of things. Raila purports to be climbing the mountain, and which he has attempted to do. But I think he also needs to look at the people who sit around him, because they debunk what he does. For example, the utterances of the Honorable Junet. And I saw him in one of the stations yesterday trying to defend himself and saying he was misquoted. What he said debunked everything that Raila had built. You know, when you customize, in that station yesterday night was saying that politics are local. And I want to advise my friend Junet Mohammed that politics are local from the governorship to all the way down. Because the governor will now be looking at the jurisdiction within which he wants to be elected, and then will localize politics to that jurisdiction if it's a county or an MP or anything. But when it's a national seat, the presidency, then you have to get a national outlook, and you must be speaking to this country as one country. So when you come and tell the people of Central, and more so, and you remember in his address, he lastly mentions Mutahi, who comes from the mountain.
But we also know how humorous Junet Mohammed can be.
We know how
and if we are to listen to the words of the leaders, then we would be prompted to listen to what the likes of Oscar Sudi.
I want to castigate him also. I'm coming back to, because I want to go across board. So if you look at what all the work that Raila Amolo Odinga had done. You know that in a single utterance by a single politician, and what we would have done, he would have been wise enough to just come and stand up and say, what Junet Mohammed has said is not necessarily true. I'm going to become a president of everybody. But when you just keep quiet and you speak after Junet, and then you say nothing, then that is taken to be gospel truth. Because Junet has been known to hold brief. Even in BBI, he was the one who was acting for Raila. So you take his word for a fact. That is one. Also,
are you not over magnifying this as the hustler nation so that you could ride on the same?
Because also in commissions want to castigate what the Oscar Sudi did.
Yes.
And I think we need to, and even as the likes of CS for internal security and the PS, Matiangi, we need to weigh in on these people from now. As any stupid utterance from right now should be handled, you know, so that it prevents people from, because you see the Grandes Wanga and whatever you have seen in the Standard, they're keeping quiet. You know, the people who speak for their bosses, they're keeping quiet. And time is coming, they'll start speaking. So we need to pick out on whoever speaks first. And
even when there are political rhetorics that are allowed in most cases, no. That's why they'll tell you, you know what, tutamuita mtu akitendawili, the other person will call him
that's what I'm saying is,
but it's not really.
It is a principle that we should castigate those people.
Okay.
It is a principle that we should castigate those people. So I think Matiangi should be serious on this thing. I have a problem with those people who are arrested over the Busia skirmishes. Yes. You know, I am seeing a 14 years old and a 16 years old, minors, and some 4 people. I want to hope they've arrested the actual people, because what I know is no one on own volition, a 14 years old boy, would pick a stone and throw into vehicles unless there was someone behind.
Mahesh, you know, this is the irony. I have never had a conversation about politics with my little boy who's 7 years.
Yes.
But not once or twice he's told me, Mimi sitapigia kura so and so. He's mentioned a specific person, not once or twice. He doesn't even have a voice. I have not had that conversation with him, but he has repeated that statement not once.
Would he have the guts to pick a stone and throw at someone's car?
Actually, what Junet said,
there has to be some influence from some quarter.
Right.
What Junet is saying, in my opinion, is why a lot of people may actually support Raila.
Yes.
You see, the idea that once Raila goes there, will become the president, and become the president for Kenya is a very appealing one for nearly everybody.
Yeah.
The people think the person most likely to deal a mortal blow to the Ngangesta state, which it has become a Ngangesta state now. It is really a Ngangesta state. It's Raila Odinga. Now, what Junet was insinuating, what they need to do is to just shut up. Because this is how they are going to ruin the Raila's chances by now frightening the Mount Kenya mafia. You see, this because if you look at the people who have been defeating on this country, when you look at the owners of independent power producer, for example, these are not from Nyanza. They are not even the Kalenjins. These are fellows from the Mount Kenya. Okay?
Yes.
And you look what they have done with the country is pure robbery. Because they are paid and reasonable rates, they are paid for the power we don't need, because the Jubilee government has invested heavily in power production. But that investment has not benefited the people of Kenya, because underneath here, there are people taking the money away. You know, the windmill in Turkana, for example, when you pay those people in dollars, what you have done, you have imported air. Okay?
Yes.
So these fellows will be frightened and go opposing Raila. That's why people like Junet should just shut up. You understand?
Right.
And allow Raila to campaign.
Okay.
Because if this fellow actually goes there and then becomes a nationalist, which he has always been, that can only be good for Kenya.
You know, I want you to answer Meshach. I would have answered him on your behalf, but I think I'll allow you to. Linda, can you ask Professor, when he discovered all that about Right Honorable Raila Odinga, became as late as the last election, or because I think he wanted to say because as late as the last election he was for Uhuru and Ruto, did he settle for the second when the first was available? The last election.
Actually, let me answer this. Yes. I will answer that very quietly. The power brokers in Meru have refused me the job in government, in this government, for supporting Raila in the last election.
Elections, all right. So I think that's why I said I should have answered that for you, but then now that you're here.
So it's probably asking that based on the answers the prof is giving.
But are you not worried in such a time?
There are more pro-Raila answers, you know, he's more inclined towards.
But now when you say that, when you say that, I mean, when you say that again, it brings us to the very same conversation. What are the chances that Right Honorable Raila Odinga is sellable in the mountain?
Well, I think everybody is sellable, because what he has to do is to come with his agenda. So we can see that agenda whether it's good for Kenya, not just the mountain. Of course, it's good to zero in on economic condition of a region. And then I like that because you are in the market. So I want to say everybody is up in the mountain. You see, one thing also is this place has the most educated people in the country.
Yes.
Okay? And the most educated people should be able to understand that your agenda and whether the agenda is for good. Because you see, I was looking, for example, the route was off of 100 billion. What is wrong with that 100 billion is that this is a nation of thieves. So the last thing you want is another government kitty.
Right.
Because they will just be stolen. They are stolen the youth fund already. So you go and set up another one. So Ruto need to be advised that the best thing is to attack the unjust tax system. So that you can leave people in money in people's pockets and then they can invest. People also are the best people to figure out what they want to do.
Right.
Okay. Now, when you look at the Raila's proposal of 6,000, it's doable simply because if you stop corruption, there will be too much money.
Yes, and he says that his main move...
because our problem is actually corruption.
Yes.
Now, the people in the mountain, if you go now...
Prof, to be honest, let me just...
No, I'll allow you the chance to...
So that you could answer together. If he says the 6,000 is viable and the 100 billion is not viable, you know, the 6,000...
I didn't say 100 million is not viable.
He did not say that.
I just said
he would rather advise
I said in addition of that, thieves, which we have become...
I wanted to address the issue of kitty because even the 6,000 will still be in a kitty.
Yes.
No, it won't.
That, so it will exist.
It won't be like the ministry.
When you're appropriating, you appropriate that in a kitty, all right? Because we're in government and you know how systems work.
Okay.
Because when you're appropriating, you appropriate that money in a certain kitty. So is the 100 billion. So we are talking about, if it's about theft, then every whether it's the Rider 6,000, which will be cumulative to a couple of billions, of course, and the Ruto 100 billion again, they will in terms of economic principles, they will exist in kitties.
Let me give you the difference.
Okay.
The difference is, for example, the money now supporting the elderly is distributed by the ministry for what is called that ministry. Okay, that is different than establishing youth fund.
Okay.
Because youth fund, the other day you saw people going to jail.
It was bad.
You saw how many millions they have stolen.
Yeah.
In a country where you cannot control theft, the last thing you want is big government. You need a small government. And that's why I support the deputy president also when he injected this nonsense of expanding the executive. Because what we don't need that. All we need is a small government that serves the people of Kenya, not the big government. Right. So what is Ruto proposing here is proposing another government branch basically to run that money for the small businesses. But there is one thing you can do with the small business, remove all the taxes. Simple. Just remove the taxes.
And
the people will now move. And then after you remove the taxes, the taxes are too heavy. There's up to 12 or something like that.
But I mean, as heavy as they are, we're not collecting enough to sustain our budget.
Of course not. And the other thing, where we are not going to depend enough because you are supporting corruption. The other thing is move the government out of money market. This is what Kibaki did. You see, Ruto's bottom-up economics is not new. This was Kibaki's formula for developing.
And so it would work, you think?
So it would work.
It would work.
It would absolutely work. But it will be encompassed by the proposals also, which I think he has not analyzed properly. Because those proposals of setting up money for the mamambogas and all that is a distributive economics. Distributive economics simply doesn't work, and especially in a corrupt country, we have to accept one thing. We are a corrupt society. So anywhere you are going to set up as another branch of government to do something, you need to think about that. So is in bottom up is good. It can be done. You need to move the government out of the money market so that the banks can start again hawking money in the streets. The way they did under Kibaki. He needs to figure out what to do with this tax system, but not the handout. Now, the Raila handout, so that you don't, I'm not campaigning for it. I'm not in Raila's campaign. I'm a professor and a very neutral one. I'm actually extremely neutral in this one. I'm just trying to analyze. If the president is saying we lose 2 billion in daily on corruption, and again, as usual, we say nothing because we should have asked him to resign. Because we asked him to protect us and our resources. Now he says he can't do it. He's not
he asked, what do you want me to do?
Yes, he is not in control. And we never asked him, please, and then if you can't do it, can you give space to somebody who can? So if you are losing 2 billion per day, you try to multiply that, and then you try to look at the vulnerable households, which Raila says he will support with the 6,000, and you realize it can be done.
It's just that we
So
need
let me
to
just
have the
raise
system
that,
right.
because Linda, we know the principles of accounting, and we know how money is appropriated, and we know how budgets are done. So we're talking about different terms here. When you talk of Ruto talking of about 100 billion and there's due 20 billion for what? That will exist within equities. I don't want to hold bill for him, but I know a couple of things, probably, Professor. And I'll tell you, this money will be channeled through a ministry, just like the money for old people is channeled through a ministry, just like Raila intends to do with the 6,000. But in terms of appropriation, it is appropriated in a kitty. There has to be a certain vote head, you know, that money will exist in. The issue is where you will distribute that money through, whether you have enough structures and credible structures that will make sure that money is not stolen. So just like you have done and succeeded in the kitty that holds the money for the old people, when you take this through a ministry and create a department and a directorate that deals with that, then it's also viable. You know, so everything could be viable. If none is viable, all are not viable. If one is viable, all are viable. Because in terms of economic principles, in terms of appropriations, then they all exist within a kitty.
Me, I'm just looking at the CNDF. The way the Mheshimiwa here and his political class with that money, relatives, friends of their political supporters. Do you understand? The only way, fairest way to give Kenyans a fighting chance, it is to deal with the tax regime. Because that money will just be like CDF.
That is what was coming.
It will just be like CDF. So there is something also to give credit to the Deputy President. He said, and I've seen that people never understood it because they are attacking him in the social media. He said in his administration, once he's the president, there will be no money to steal. Now people misunderstood that completely because he says because you would have stolen all of it. But that's what the deputy president is saying. The money is available for stealing because it's doing nothing. Okay, but you know, in the real economic definition of corruption, it's actually corruption is not a bad thing, by the way, economically, not morally, because corruption can develop the country, because that's what it is. It's actually removing money from an inefficient user, who is the state, who is the government, to an efficient user, who is the individual. So what Ruto says is there will be no inefficiency in government. The money budgeted for this telephony, that money will buy the phone.
That telephone.
That's what he's saying. And I think if we can start thinking like that, it's possible to correct this economic mess. That's why I think this the candidates, they need to set up an economic team outside the people who parrot them, who support them like parrots, a critical minds outside who can now analyze these proposals and tell them how they can be implemented and which ones even to vacate, because Mheshimiwa here want to defend the 100 billion. But he's not looking at the pros or cons, because you see me, I'm looking big. I'm looking at the CNDF and I'm looking at what my children tells me in the classroom, how they can get it because they don't know anybody in the MP circle. The Mama Mboga won't get that money because the Mama Mboga won't know anyone in the circle which is issuing that money. But when you remove this tax regime, that automatically goes to the Mama Mboga automatically. Yes. So if you are honest here in this thing, you tell us how you will fix this tax system, because the tax system needs fixing. It's a banned system. It's just been put in an exploitative manner. Our government continued the exploitation of the colonial state. Our government has actually been a problem, not part of the solution, because it is the colonial state which looks at the Kenyans as a means of exploitation.
But they manage, and I mean, this is what is happening in their own countries. These states are making, people are paying tax in these countries without worrying. They just get value for their money.
My point of departure with Prof is that I agree we have a serious tax issues that needs to be addressed. But you see, everybody is willing to pay tax in this country, because the reason why we are not getting enough taxes, and we must agree that a country is run by taxes. Every project that we have to do, then especially before we even borrow outside. And I've told you what we need to do as a country, and I've told you this time and again, is that look at ways of harnessing as much as we can as a country. And the best way to do it is not to remove tax from these people. We can't lower that tax fine, but we need to empower this person so that this person is able to make money and in return pay taxes. And again, we're looking at people who you're saying, let's remove taxes from them. They have absolutely no job to do. They have nothing to do, you know? So what do you do to that person is you must empower him to get a job so that you allow him to pay tax. There could be minimal taxes, and that will add into the kitty. I've given you another example. For example, when you look at healthcare, if you want to improve our healthcare, I've given you, for example, the issue of taxation, the disparity that exists within NHIF. I've told you, a person who earns 5,000 shillings in this country pays 500 shillings for their NHIF, which is 10%. A person who earns 1,000,000 shillings pays 1,700 shillings, which is 0.0 something of the salary. You see, there is a big discrepancy. And we normally say, let's address this, for example, let's put it at 7%. If you put it at 7%, what will that tell you? The Mamamboga who earns 5,000 will now not be required to pay 500 shillings. It will actually be less. It will pay about 400 or 430. And then the person who pays 100 and 1,700 while he earns 1,000,000 will now it will be taken higher and you pay about 30,000 or thereabout, which is commensurate to what he earns. That way, we shall be able to add into that kitty. And once we have that kitty and it's large, even government can borrow, so that the proceeds of what the government pays back with improves the healthcare. So those are some of the things that we need to look to do as we look at our tax regime. But I quite agree that we have a serious problem with our tax regime, and we need to address it. But we also need to look at how we address it, because I don't think exempting tax for everybody will build an economy.
I didn't say exempt, but I just want to give Mheshimiwa some statistics here. The taxes, you know, the economy is promoted in two ways, production and consumption. Consumption is being undermined by the taxation. So all you have to do, if you want to deal with the corruption in this country, even the individual taxes, which you are now paying 30%, can go to 70%. Allow you to have a disposable income. Let me just give you an example. In the year 2020, Kenya Power and Lighting Company spent 66% of its revenue on purchasing power from Kengen. This is what it paid Kengen, which is applied 76% of the power which we need. 5 shillings and 48 per unit. Now look what they paid the power producers. 2020, Lake Turkana Wind, 9 shillings and 89 cents. What they are calling Oro Power for Incorporated, 11 shillings and 34 per unit. Rabai Power Limited, 19 shillings, 0.6 per unit. Savo Power Limited, 26 shillings per unit. Iberia Africa, East Africa, 47 shillings and per unit. Ngao Power, 121 shillings and 56 cents per unit. Okay? What have I done here? I've jumped something. So, this thing has really jumped. Now, let me give you the final one. The final one is Trump Power. 173 shillings per unit. When you multiply this, and then there's Dhika Power for 54 shillings. If you multiply this amount of money alone from 202, when some of these contracts were made, it runs into billions. So all you have to do, because you see only somebody who hates his country who will have a contract like this. Okay? Who will have a contract like this. Now the MPs know this, your MPs know this, but they have never raised it. They have never raised. So you close these loopholes.
Okay.
There is nothing you cannot do here, including living in Mamamboga with no taxes at all.
That's
all you need to close these loopholes.
So for me, we have to follow.
Yes,
but I don't want to
lastly, if there's something that all of us will agree, that we've closed the corruption loophole, then this country will be good to go. Lastly, as I wind up, Linda, it is we are remaining with a week to close the voter registration. We've only done 750, which is, if you divide 4 weeks by the target 4.5 million, that would have told you we ought to have done 1 million plus every week. We are now remaining with 1 week where we have only done as a country 750,000. So in terms of our target, we are way off. We are way off our target. I can see your producer don't want to give you minutes, but
I am asking for 10 minutes, and I am genuinely asking for it. I hope. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we come back in 10 minutes.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, hi guys. Sorry, you found me 5 minutes before I started recording, but anyway, so most of you have been asking me why I started Lady CLC Nighting with Joy Rongo. I have also had my own share of pain. I know how it feels to want to give up. This is basically here to speak hope and inspire somebody who's going through a rough patch, to tell them that they can turn their pain into power our guests are normally here to share their experiences so that you can know somebody else did it, so you can also come out of it stronger and better. Let me go to my recording, and remember to always stay tuned every Saturday at 8:30 p.m.
Undertaking husband duties on a boyfriend tender.
Guys, with bromance, do you share your woman with the bro?
Have a sister? Give me your sister. I show you how these things are done.
So you go release and be like,
Men supporting each other, not only financially, but also socially.
Don't mingle with women you can't deal with.
Is there really a formula for dating and marriage?
Some men are procreational, some men are recreational.
Every Wednesday on TV47, the Men's Conference brings you a cocktail of top-notch advice to breed alpha males for alpha females in the society.
Tunaweza tumia hii tenje tutresiwe do. Mimi naitwa Ben. Mimi ndo rafiki ya babako.
Tumeleta doza zako usimize mtoto.
And now we have to deal with a drug addict.
Yaani ulio mzee wako.
I had to.
Sema! Doza zangu ziko wapi?
Ben!
Tuisheni Uganda.
The road to 2022 is becoming tougher and trickier with each passing day.
Well, bars were full and whatever. Yes. So we having our priorities, right? And I think it's time we now need to pull up. Bukati said a very interesting thing, that Kenyans are known for last minute is now. We only have a week. So, and you look at the queues will be long, because we're talking about now 3-point-something million that has to be registered if they are going to realize what they intended to do. So I'm asking Kenyans to just go out there, because that will be our duty as leaders. If they don't come here and just complain that people are not taking votes and not urge them to go out there and take votes, I think I'll be doing a wrong thing. So Kenyans, let's do this, especially the young people. But it's incumbent upon all of us to convince them why they need to go and vote, because that is very important. Let's give them a reason why they should go and vote. Yes.
You know, I've just seen this piece, Professor Heads to Roll as Power Farm Energy, PS Kihalangwa says, this as it goes to the hands of the government. I hope they'll be able to do something in terms of sealing the loopholes that you spoke about. But then, Nairobi, do you suppose Nairobians should have been allowed to go and vote?
Yeah, I think Nairobi people should have been given an opportunity to elect their own governor. I think we have treated this city ourselves, the voters. Yeah. Because I see there are two examples, glaring examples, which make you realize there's something wrong with the Kenyan voter. In Kirinyaga, for example, you give them an opportunity of Martha Karua and an opportunity of the current governor, Annie Waiguru. She has just come from any wise scandal, and they take her as opposed to Martha Karua. In Nairobi, you give them an opportunity of Njimu Nambaro and the Kendero. Kendero just made a lot of people miserable in Mumias down there by bringing down Mumia, they take Kendero. So there is something wrong with us as voters, and like Mheshimiwa was saying here, we need a lot of education. We need to know the decision that we make will have an impact on us. Yeah. So Nairobi clearly needed an opportunity to elect their own governor. Okay, you know, people think they made a mistake with the Sonko, but I can tell you something about Sonko. What Sonko lacks is really education, because there is something in management which we call the Peter principle, being promoted beyond the competence. So Sonko is a good man and a good politician who was promoted beyond the competence. And that's a problem, because one incident I remember about him, there's a woman who owned my grandmother in Embu. Yes. And she has an MCA, she has a woman rep, nobody cared. But Sonko went all the way to remove that woman from jail. We don't have that kind of leader who can feel our pain. Because leadership is about feeling the pain of the people you lead. So he's a special case. His only weakness was that he was really promoted beyond competence. But in Nairobi needs a proper governor, just like any other county.
Two things, Linda, on that. I think Nairobians ought to have been given an opportunity to elect their governor. But I was talking to Prof off here, and I was telling him we need to address our registration, for example. I have always found it very unfair when the County Government Act stipulates on the procedure upon which you can remove a governor. And then it says that a governor who has been elected by, for example, 1 million people, is now being removed by an assembly that has 100 members of the county assembly.
All right.
Who have who will be bribed and swayed in political directions by, of course, quotas that have political interests. How fair is it to that county when 100 people decide for them, irrespective of the fact that Article 1 of the Constitution talks about sovereign power being exercised through directory or through elected people? But again, I also think in as far as the removal of a governor, there should be a stake of the people. And in an event that is removed, to me, the law should be that the people of that county should go back to the ballot and then elect a different leader. Or even when he's being ousted, public participation, proper public participation should be carried out to make sure that this decision is in tandem with what the people would love to do. But I've always thought it's really unfair, and we've been left with the people crying out in many counties where governors have been ousted because the people were not properly consulted, and immediately this other one is sworn in, there is Ulabalu and everybody is complaining everywhere. So I think we need to address that law, but I think Nairobi ought to be given an opportunity to elect their own governor. Let's see what transpires in court. That's very interesting. You know, let's see what, because Supreme Court, of course, will be the last one. Let's see what transpires. But I don't think there is, I don't want to be cited as sub judice, but I don't see anything much changing at the Supreme Court. Of course, the court will look at the issue of natural justice on another view, look at the time that is left, the timelines on another view, and probably do it in favor of rather agree with. Yes. So I think that is what is going to play out. But for the people of Nairobi, I sympathize with you. It's been very rough. Make a credible decision next time, and to the members of the County Assembly of Nairobi, because I was in Kiambu when that was being done. It's really unfair. And I will tell you this for a fact, and I'll look at you straight in the eyes. I was the only person who was in that assembly fighting for Waititu. Remember then? Remember, I was the only person in that assembly trying to, I was the only no in Kiambu County, you know, when BBI came. I did that out of a conviction that was in me. I have seen things that play out in assemblies, money that is dished out and all those things. But let me tell you something, if you are immoral enough to do those things will haunt you and haunt your children. Do what is right as a leader.
Well put. Anthony Konya, member of County Assembly, Kiambu Township.
My friend, for voting no on the BBI.
All right. Professor, thank you so much. Professor Gitile.
I was the only one.
Naituli, governance expert. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Asante, let me take the opportunity to wish the president happy birthday.
Oh, yes.
Harmony.
Linda, you also need to do this.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.